This is Damon with SSVi, and I'm going to show you how to swap out the trigger in a standard size Glock frame. So pay attention, and I'm going to go over all the key points that oftentimes get missed, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, right now we're going to be working with an SSVi Signature Series Glock 19, but overall the process is the same whether it's a 19, 26, 21, any of the current frames that are out right now, aside from the 42 and 43, they're just a little bit different. So, first thing we do, of course, make sure it is safe and clear. So nothing in the mag well, nothing in the chamber. Next thing we're going to do is pull the trigger, and we're going to ease the tension on the slide. So we're just going to pull it back about a 1/4 inch. Pull the slide lock lever down and ease the slide forward. So there we go. Slides off. Now we've got just the frame to work with. Okay, from here, the order I usually do it, and it doesn't really matter, just try to be consistent. So housing pin, short little plastic pin, it's going to come straight out. Now the trigger pin is held in by the slide lock. So in order to get that out, you've got to kind of maneuver and just move the slide lock around a bit to pop it off the little slot that it's in. So just going to use some pressure here on the trigger pin, moving this around. Sometimes it's fun to work with. Like so. So, trigger pin, slide lock comes out. Little spring right there. That spring needs to sit underneath the trigger block pin. So we'll go over that when we put it all back together. And then that pin comes out. Trigger block, and I'm just using the same punch to push everything through and pull everything out. Okay, so at this point we're going to take the trigger housing out. So there we go, that's how it looks, that's how it's going to look when you pull yours out. And some things to pay attention to here that a lot gets missed. If you so this is how it looks when you pull it out. If you look directly into the trigger housing, so put yourself where I am, so you got the trigger shoe facing you. If you move this up, you can see how the spring is set on this trigger bar right here. And it should be straight, basically forming an S. So you see the back of that trigger spring right here. It's going to be curving that way, then around the other side. So that will make a whole lot of sense till you can see it for yourself, but that spring should be vertical there on the slot in the trigger bar. So when you're looking at it like so, if I can get it to focus, this will be a little tricky here. So what we're looking at right here is back here, how that spring is sitting right there in that slot. So back here, because a lot of times when you get the new one, get it installed, it ends up popping over here to the side. Now you can see that it's kind of off kilter back there. I know it's trying to focus on the wrong thing, but hopefully it makes sense where you're looking. Okay, so overall though, okay, pull this out a little bit away from the housing so you can grab hold of that spring. So just grab the spring. Now we're just going to twist that off. Now we're taking a tier trigger, white in this case, to match this gun. That doesn't really matter though. If you're just taking everything apart to clean it, all this stuff still applies. So whether you're swapping triggers, just trying to do a real thorough cleaning, this is the best way to do it. So same thing, you're going to kind of twist it back onto that pin, pull it around the housing so it stays on every part that it needs to. And as you slide it back in, so right here, this is where things tend to get messy with people either doing it themselves or their local gunsmith is helping them. So again, what we need to pay attention to is this spring, the end of the spring staying vertical right here, up and down. If it gets twisted to the side, like so, that's bad. We're going to have reset issues. So that's any trigger you're using. You need to have that vertical, not off to the side like this. It needs to be right there in that little groove. That's why that groove exists on the trigger bar. So as I pull it around, and as I maneuver it, you kind of, so see how I'm doing it? Got it out like this. Put the that little grooved end into the housing first, and twisting it away so that cruciform here moves away from the housing, so I can drop the whole thing down and then twist it back in. So now it's in that slot. Now this is the crucial part right here. Now that you've got it installed, even though you're paying attention the whole time, it's still pretty possible and pretty common to see that spring get twisted off to the side, and there's not a good way to get lighting in there to see it. But if you're there in person, you can look straight down to the housing and see whether that spring is in that groove on the trigger bar or not. So once you see for yourself, okay, everything's lined up and everything is where it should be, now we're just going to put it all back together. So from here, it's not going to fall off. It's in the housing correctly. It's going to stay where it needs to go. So trigger shoe in the housing. And at this point, you can, if you want to, just move the whole trigger up so it sets on the connector correctly. Now we're going to go ahead and throw the trigger block in. And I tried to do it the reverse order I did everything else before. So trigger block pin, that's going to go here up top. Push that in. It's going to sit a little bit recessed on each side, which is what you want. Okay, that needs to go in first because your slide stop, that spring needs to go underneath that bar. If you do it out of order, that spring may end up popping on top of it, and now it's just going to be, it'll have no tension, sits floppy, and your slide may lock back when you don't want it to. So you can visually see for yourself, the camera's not going to pick it up, but that spring is underneath that bar. So we're going to place it right there, hold it in place. Now we're taking the trigger pin and we're going in from the side the slide stop is not. So at this point, it's just kind of a matter of lining things up. So if you need to, hold it from this side so you can visually see through there and see where the pin's coming from. You can pop it through the rest of the way. Okay, now one thing you should hear, and I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but you should hear a click as it pops into place with the slide stop. So I'm just going to gently push that and see if you can hear it. So just that little click, that slight noise, that's all you're looking for. So we know that's in place. Plastic housing pin. Push that in the rest of the way. And all we have left to do is throw the slide on. So from here, make sure your recoil spring is seated correctly. If it's even slightly imperceptibly off to the side or whatever, it's not going to pop back on. So make sure you get all your rails lined up. Once you rack it, should be in battery and good to go. So first thing we want to check is safety functioning correctly. Yep, that trigger is not going back unless I push on the safety to make it go back. Now we're going to pull the trigger. So there it goes. Now we're going to rack it with the pressure on the trigger. So now we're checking for reset. So there we go, click. Should have zero problems resetting. The other thing you want to check is pull the trigger, and when you rack it without pressure, it should still cock that forward without any problem. So we're good to go on all counts there. There we go. That is the process for taking apart and putting together your frame for the purpose of swapping out triggers or maintenance. There you go. Hope you learned a bit. Share it. Throw some comments down there if you like it. If there's something I should have done different, let me know about it. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.